Alright all, and welcome back to the Day 3 preview of the Irish Grand National weekend at Fairyhouse. We've just finished up Sunday's card, then we're looking forward to Monday now with the Irish Grand National itself being the feature, the big race of the day. Looking back at today, after a decent enough day on Saturday, and there's no getting away from today. Today was an absolute stinker on my behalf. I can only apologise. Look, we had a decent enough Cheltenham. I've been in decent form the last couple of weeks, but today was just a bit of a stinker. There was a couple of horses that ran no type of races. El Barrow did win for us in the first. I thought, oh great, we've won the first. Aramax ran well into a place, but the Devil's Coachman was seriously disappointing. Gentleman's Game was seriously disappointing. These horses potentially not acting on the slightly better ground. And that's something to bear in mind just with these races at the moment. This ground can affect results, and yeah, I know a couple of horses, the likes of Echoes in Rain, were 2-1 and stuff like that, but there were a fair few horses at 10, 12-1 that went in today, that if you backed one of them, your day would have been made, but certainly wasn't to be for me. I had a couple of other horses on the deck. Exit Poles backed from 10-1 into 7-2, fell. Cedarwood Road fell. These sort of things can happen. You can have a day like that, and unfortunately we've got to dust ourselves off and go again tomorrow, and hopefully manage to get a bit of that back. It's a decent enough card, 7 races, and competitive action, an awful lot of each way shouts here, if I'm being honest. I'm going to be quickly running through them all, starting off with the 205, a very trappy 2-mile novices handicap hurdle. Got 2 for you in this, 2 of them near enough the top of the weights as well, starting off with Shanroe, who I'm putting up at 7-1 each way for Carl Thornton and Donna Myler off a mark of 123. He's a real good ground horse, and he's been a decent enough dual purpose horse in kind of staying flat handicaps and handicaps over hurdles. He's maybe a shade disappointing the last day at Downpatrick and finishing 4th behind Papal Lodge, who didn't run particularly well today, so the form of that isn't probably up to the best amount, but I do think he's a bit better than that. As I say, good ground does suit this horse very well, and I think he could run a massive race off a mark of 123. I'd still be surprised if he's not a little bit better than that mark. And the other one I'm going to put up is actually the American trained French Light for Kerry Bryan. Kerry Bryan had a bumper winner today, which was brilliant for her. She had a little venture over here with 5 or 6 horses and has had plenty of these run very well, including this lad a couple of times. He's maybe been a shade disappointing the last twice, but he's back on really good ground here today, and I felt from Kerry Bryan's interview with Tom McLean after the bumper winner today at Cork that silently, I think she's quite hopeful about this guy. Richie Condon takes £7 off the mark of 127. You're getting 12-1 each way in a race that's 5 places with the majority of bookies. I think he could do a bit of damage, and even though he is top weight, I think he could run very, very well for American connections before Kerry Bryan obviously leaves to go back to America on Saturday. Moving on to the 240, tricky enough Juvenile Hurdle, just because Tiupo looks like he's going to win. I wouldn't put anyone off back in Tiupo. I think he will win at 4-6, but do you really want to be getting involved 4-6 in a juvenile race? Wouldn't be for me anyway, even though he does have the best form in this. Very hard to know. Zafanian obviously came so close to winning today at Cork. Is he going to come back out again? I'd be highly doubtful, which leaves each way punters slightly in the air. I am going to put one up at an each way price, and it is Coventry for Paul Nolan and Brian Cooper. I just think this horse won very nicely the last day, beating Yaya Baby by 7.5 lengths, who's actually gone on to frank the form today down in Cork, winning quite impressively herself. So that form looks pretty good. Was second on debut for John Halley before going to Paul Nolan's, fell on stable debut before winning the last day. His jumping was much more assured, and you're getting 14-1. It might be just 2 places. I'd be keen enough to take on Jeff Kidder, who won the Fred Winter off a basement mark at 80-1. He's going to have to prove it to me to come back into the frame, and Bustleton was an absolute bust in the Fred Winter, coming near on last. Very hard to know what to make of him. And Coventry, if you took Zafanian out, Coventry's the next in the betting, and I think 14-1 might be a shade big for him. And if there was the 8 that go to post, then of course it'd be great because you'd get the 3 places. Even if it's 2 places, I'm going to play him. I think he's a little bit underestimated in the market. A couple of these coming back from Cheltenham. I'm fairly keen to take on the majority of these horses coming back from Cheltenham. Ellie May kind of proved that some of these horses have had hard races. Asterion Forlange didn't look full of beans today either. So It's just something to bear in mind, and especially with short enough prices about these sort of horses. Jeff Kidder 4-1 couldn't be for me, even though he was great in the Fred Winter. The 3:15, 2 miles 6 furlong handicap hurdle. Going to give you two here at decent enough prices. One being Max Flamingo at 13-2. Won the last day at Leopardstown. Wasn't winning out of turn as well. He'd been a bit of a consistent but not quite maiden. But he seems to like a little bit of nicer ground, and won pretty cosily the last day at Leopardstown in a maiden hurdle. And that will do his confidence no end of good. And he's in here off a mark of 120. I think there's a bit of scope for improvement off that mark. He's 13-2. I think he should be a little bit shorter, but trained by Francis Casey, perhaps you're going to get a slightly bigger price than you should be getting on this horse. I think he should be near on favourite, actually, based off that form. His maiden form up until that was pretty good as well. And Francis Casey's been having a lovely little time of things. He had a lovely winner at Navan the other week. Palace Rock, certainly one to keep the right side of, both on the flat and over hurdles. But this Max Flamingo would surprise me if he isn't bang there, and hopefully he can do a bit of business for us at 13-2. And the other one in here, I'm going to take one last chance on Aaron's Day at 14-1. You can get 14-1 with Bet365. I think that's 4 or 5 places. I can't remember what it is. Might only just be the 4. But yeah, he ran that super race on his reappearance at Naas. He's been found out the last twice, but that being said, he was 6th, very closely behind Jackson's Gold, who ran a super race in the big 3 mile handicap hurdle here on Saturday. So the form of that doesn't look half bad. A step up to 2 miles 6 might be seen to better effect. He's going right-handed as well for the first time in a while, which I'm not sure how that's going to end up figuring out for him. But I think it might be nice for him to get away from Naas and maybe have a slightly more forgiving finish to his race than the uphill that happens in the last furlong at Naas. And I just think he might be a little bit overpriced. Unchanged mark from the last day, which is probably fair enough. He was beaten 4 lengths in a bunch finish. I think there's still a bit of something to come from this horse, and it wouldn't surprise me if he was to outrun those 14-1 odds. Obviously, Fox Fearless ran a cracking race for Connections today in a very similar type race. The 350 is the big 2 mile 4 hurdle. Looks a competitive race again at the top of the mark. You have 2 horses that have had pretty hard races at Cheltenham in Beacon Edge and the Boss's Oscar. Now, Beacon Edge, if this race was being run any other time of the season, I think Beacon Edge would win. And I'm a big fan of Beacon Edge. But that being said, he's had a really tough race in the Stayers Hurdle, I believe. He hasn't ended up staying as well. I always think, horses that aren't staying, surely they're absolutely knackered by the finish. Maybe he's good enough and maybe he's fresh enough to come out and do the business, as Ellie May did do. And it mightn't be pretty, but he might get the job done. That being said, looking even at his novice hurdle campaign last year, he tended to find 1-2 good sometimes. And I know he beat Fury Road 2 starts back, but again, he can find 1-2 good in some of these stronger races, and I just wouldn't be ploughing in at the short odds myself. The Boss's Oscar needs to step up on form. That being said, has a chance on doing so. Back in grade 2 company over 2.5 miles, but ran a cracker in the per temps, but off a large weight, and is backing up plenty quick enough. The 2 I'm taking in this race, one of them being one of my horses to follow this season, French Dynamite for Mouse Morris and Rachel Blackmore. I am a little bit concerned that these Mouse Morris horses may all want a little bit of softer ground, but I'm going to take the risk that, if this horse is there at post time, that they obviously think he can operate on it. He won at Leopardstown the last day on slightly better ground as well. Didn't jump overly well in a Mickey Mouse 3-runner race. He had to make his own running, or he was kind of left alone. He had plenty of things to look at, not enough kind of concentration on the job. And I'd like to hope maybe back in a slightly better field that going a stronger gallop might help this horse quite a lot. A bit of cover would do no harm as well. He's 6-1. I'm going to play him each way. And maybe it is the biased Oliver McKiernan side of me that wants to give Unexpected Depth another go. I just didn't think the race the last day at Thurles didn't work out for him. He was in the wrong position all the way. He was getting hustled along, didn't jump as well as he can as well. Maybe the track didn't suit him as much as they thought it might. Just on a line through the Boss's Oscar form, he's obviously only beaten by that horse a length in the per temps qualifier at Christmas time. Wouldn't have a whole heap to find on him based off that, and one horse is 3-1 and one horse is 12-1. Unexpected Depth then ran an absolute stormer at the Dublin Racing Festival. He did disappoint the last day, but I'm going to give him just a small chance here. Maybe, some people will say that is the bias side of me taking over, but I think he could outrun his odds, as often these Oliver McKiernan horses do tend to do. The 420, the Devonish Stakes, would be steering clear of Fakir Duderee. He's the class horse in the race. He should win. But 6-5 for a horse that seems to love just hitting his head off the crossbar wouldn't be for me. Instead, it's a bit, it's not a great price each way, but you'll see in the next race as well. Especially after having a bruising day, you're usually a little bit more conservative. And Paddy Power and two other bookmakers are going 11-2 easy game, and I'm going to play him each way. I think he's got a good chance in this. He loves good ground. He loves these sort of, slightly smaller field grade 2 affairs. This is a 10-runner race. You're getting 3 places about him. He did fall the last day behind Allaho and was well beaten when unseating at the time. But that being said, based off his summer form, he'd have to have a chance in this on better ground. Closely matched in with Battle Over Doyen from the Down Royal run as well. I think he's got a very good chance of being in the frame. The 5 o'clock, the big one, the Irish Grand National. Look, there's 2 horses that I've mentioned on copious amounts throughout the season, and I'm not going to stray away from the 2 of them. One being Top Weight himself, latest exhibition at 11-2. I'm going to play it each way. I'm going to play it safe. It's an Irish Grand National. You're getting 5 or 6 places. I'm going to use it. It's still over even money for the place. Not, I know it's maybe not the, risky thing to do. It's not the ballsy thing to do, but to be honest, I've had such a bruising day, I'm not really complaining about it. I think he's got a massive chance. Keep him out of trouble. Let him bowl along near enough the front, 3rd or 4th. Do a bit of an R-Duke on it. I can't see this horse being out of the frame, personally. I can't see him being out of the 3 as long as things go the way I'm seeing them in my head. And the other one being Run Wild Fred, who I was all over for the Kim Muir. Off a mark of 140. There's certainly a big handicap in him off this type of mark. Look, the Irish Grand National is a big race. Things can happen. Horses can fall. Horses can be brought down. All of that stuff. But Jack Kennedy rides him. Mark 140. You're getting 10-1. I do love Run Wild Fred. I talk about him almost every other day. And I'd like to see kind of my thoughts being justified in terms of him being a well-handicapped horse. Moving on to the final race, the 540, the concluder on the card, and it's no easier than the first race on each card. This 540, the 3-mile handicap chase for some of the horses that don't get into the Irish Grand National. It's a bit of a consolation race. Going to play 2 at bigger prices again, and look, hopefully, when you're playing these horses at bigger prices, if one goes in, your day's almost sorted. The 2 being Foxy Jacks at 16-1. I've just a bit of a theory with this horse that he might want a bit of better ground. He won at Cork back in October time on good ground over 2.5 miles. He's a bit of a monkey now. There's no getting away from that. He obviously nearly unshipped Rachel Blackmore, or did end up unshipping Rachel Blackmore in the Grade 1 over Christmas time. He's been a little bit disappointing since then, until an encouraging run the last day at Naas on heavy ground was it at Navan in a big novices handicap. He came 6th. He travelled on the bridle for an awful long way that day, and I just think this horse coming back right-handed on better ground off a mark of 130, being dropped £2 for that effort last time out, I think he might be a live one in this race. And the other one I'm taking a bit of a risk on, but I had a great day with him one day at the Dublin Racing Festival a few years ago. It's a horse called Whisperinthebreeze, who's 20-1. Look, he's had a bit of a big absence. He then came back over hurdles, which I'm sure was to just sharpen him up for a race of this nature. He won the big 2.5 mile handicap chase at the Dublin Racing Festival a couple of years ago. He then went on to run in the Irish Grand National, and he ran a storming race up until they turned in, and then just didn't quite get home. Ended up finishing 9th, beaten I think 50-60 lengths in the end, but just didn't stay. Ran a storming race from the front. He's a bold jumping grey. And I think he's got a big chance in this. If, I think the last day was just a hurdle run to get him ready for a race of this nature. Wouldn't surprise me to see him leave that form well behind and run a bigger race. Anyway, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, please do give it a like and subscribe to the channel down below if you're new around here. And of course, give me your selections for tomorrow's card and the big Irish Grand National itself. I'm very, very sorry about today. Just wasn't our day. It was a poor enough day punting wise, but hopefully we can knock back tomorrow with a couple of winners and get back in the groove before Aintree next week. Hopefully you stay safe, stay well. We'll be back a few winners tomorrow, and I'll see you guys soon. Cheers.